What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mythic Drafting, where today I'll be doing my draft guide to the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth set, coming out just next week on Magic Arena, and then not long after in paper as well. So if you need to know everything about how to draft this new set, this is the video for you. So without further ado, let's get right into it with the set mechanics, the first of which is the ring. So the ring is a new mechanic, and you'll see that some cards have the text "The Ring Tempts You," such as Ranger's Firebrand, which is 1 and a red for a sorcery, and it deals 2 damage to any target, and then the ring tempts you. And as the ring tempts you, you get an emblem named the Ring, if you don't have one, and then your emblem gains its next ability, and you choose a creature you control to become or remain your ring bearer. And you see the final card on the slide here is the ring itself. And so each of these steps is the abilities that the ring gains each time the ring tempts you. So if it tempts you once, your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. The second time it tempts you, whenever your ring bearer attacks, you draw a card and then discard a card. The third time it's tempted you, it also gets the ability that when it becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at the end of combat. And finally, whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So the ring is a pretty powerful mechanic in my mind. You don't want to be playing cards, I think, that are bad without the ring tempts you, but certainly cards like Ranger's Firebrand, you would play this card without it, and it's just pure upside. It's effectively, I think in my way of viewing it, is a powerful equipment that doesn't have an equip cost, can move around, and as we'll see later in the video, legends do matter in this set. So making your ring bearer legendary does matter. And also, I think this will just be a lot of fun to play with as a huge Lord of the Ring fan. And I think it's an awesome way to represent the ring in the game itself. The next mechanic is a returning mechanic. It's food. So food is a token artifact that is created by certain cards, and you can pay 2 mana to sacrifice it and gain 3 life. So Build a Pony is 3 and a white for a legendary 1/4 horse creature, and when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 food tokens. And then, like some other cards in the set, it has a sacrifice a food ability. So you can sacrifice a food, and until end of turn, target creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So there's a lot of cards in the set that create food, and a lot of cards that care about them. There are also a lot of cards in this set that care about sacrificing things and having fodder to sacrifice, which food is also fantastic for. The next ability is Amass Orcs, which is a returning mechanic with a slight twist on it. We've seen Amass before, but obviously we haven't seen Amass Orcs. So this is an ability you'll find on cards, and where it says Amass Orcs 2, what happens is you then put 2 +1/+1 counters on an army you control. It's also an orc. And if you don't control an army, you create a 0/0 black orc army creature token first. So the first time you cast a card with Amass Orcs, you'll get in the case of Dunlan Crebain, a 2/2 orc army. But then if you amass orcs again, that army will just keep on getting bigger. But if the army dies, the next time you cast one, you will get a new army. So you want to look for cards that I think are good by themselves and then have amass. But really you want to be thinking about it as an additional 2 power and toughness on any card. And effectively as well, the fact that it's split over 2 bodies is usually a good thing. So I think Dunlan Crebain, you'd probably prefer it to just be a 3/3 flyer, but this is almost similar to Preening Champion in that you're getting a flying creature and a ground body creature. It's just that they've flipped the power and toughness of those things, and having 2 bodies in this set as well in black is probably going to be relevant with the sacrifice effects as well, which is where Amass will shine. So, and then you get payoffs like Foray of Orcs, which is 3 and a red to Amass Orcs 2, and when you do, it deals X damage to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the amassed army's power. So there's some really powerful stuff with Amass Orcs, and again, I think this is an awesome way to incorporate how in the Lord of the Rings these Orcs armies just feel huge, and a great flavorful way to represent them in the set. The next ability is Sagas, and this is a card type, and not necessarily an ability, but it's an enchantment, and they'll have each different, and every time when you play it, and then every draw step, you add a lore counter to it, then you sacrifice it after the last one. And every time you add a lore counter, you effectively get that next ability on the card. So in the case of There and Back Again, it prevents 1 creature from blocking for as long as you control it, and the ring tempts you as well. Then you search your library for a mountain card, put on the battlefield, and finally you create Smorg, a legendary 6/6 dragon creature token with flying and haste, and when this creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens. Sagas are some of the more powerful cards in the set. They're really fun to play with, and don't underestimate them when you're drafting the set for the first few times. Following Sagas, we have a historic legendary theme matters. It's not as prevalent in the set as you might have thought, but there are a lot of things that reference legendaries, and legendary creatures really do matter in this set. So cards like Gandalf, Sauron are all represented by legendary creatures. There is a strong theme of legendary in the set, as well as a minor theme of artifact matters as well. But definitely keep your eye out for having the right balance of cards like Gandalf and then cards like Arwen's Gift, which care more if you control legendary creatures and become cheaper and more efficient. Then we have land cycling returning again in this set after it was just in March of the Machine. So the common cycle of cards all have their specific basic land cycling for 1 mana though this time around. And I think this is going to be pretty important in that having it being able to play it for 1 mana and do it on turn 1 is a lot better than being able to do it on turn 2. Because if you take your turn 2 in modern sets off, you can frequently fall right behind. But I think you're going to be much more comfortable in taking turn 1 off, land cycling these, and then playing a 2-drop, and then as 6-drops, or in the case of blue, drawing 3 cards. They're all powerful late game effects that you might want to have 1 or 2 copies of in your deck, and they will also help you splash some of the bomb rares in this set. Next up, we're going to take a look at the best commons in each of the colors. And taking a look at blue first, we have Athelian Kingfisher. This is 2 and a blue for a flying 2/1, and when it dies, you draw a card. This is just probably going to be the best blue common in my mind. It's efficient, it gets you card advantage in terms of you can trade it with an opponent's creature, and then you draw a card and they don't. It'll just do everything that blue decks want, and is probably going to be the printing champion style card in blue for this set. The next one is Isolation at Orthanc. Blue doesn't get much removal, and this does a pretty good job of doing it. It's 3 and a blue for an instant. Put target creature into its owner's library, second from the top. The fact that this is instant speed and not sorcery is what makes it one of the top commons, I think, in my mind. It can deal with threats, it can blow people out in combat, and it can also just remove creatures that are problematic for a couple of turns. And finally, I think one card that will be quite good is Captain of Umbar, which is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human pirate, and you can pay 1 to tap it to loot. There are a lot of cards in this set that care about drawing a card for the second time in a turn, and Captain of Umbar will reliably be able to do that while blocking on the ground as well. So I think this one's going to be quite good. It's going to enable a lot of stuff in the blue, white, and blue-green decks, and I think it'll be a solid common. Coming out next, we have white, and I've got Stalwarts of Osgiliath here. It's 4 and a white for a 4/3 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. I think this one here, the blue-white deck is going to want to have the ring tempt you at least twice so that it can enable the looting function, because that means that every time you attack with your ring bearer, you will be drawing your second card for the turn and triggering a lot of abilities. And so Stalwarts of Osgiliath is I think going to be a pretty good blue-white common. You might only want 1 or 2 of them, but it's going to top the curve. It's going to enable the second ability of the ring, and then it's also going to get the payoff when you're putting +1/+1 counters on it and quickly become a big threat to take over the game. But something a little bit more efficient is Errand Rider of Gondor, which is 2 and a white for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Then if you don't control a legendary creature, you put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. So Errand of Gondor is one of the first cards we see that cares about legendary creatures. When you have another legendary creature in play, this effectively is just a 3/2 creature to draw a card, and if you don't, it's just a 3/2 creature that loots on entry. We've also seen already that blue-white's going to care somewhat about drawing a second card a turn, so Errand Rider of Gondor is going to be a super high pick in the blue-white decks, and any deck really that cares about having 2 cards drawn a turn. The next white common is Protector of Gondor. This is 3 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. This is just 4 power and 4 toughness for 4 mana, spread over 2 bodies, which is great, and I think is just going to be the backbone of a lot of white decks in the format. Coming up next, we have the red commons, the first of which is Smite the Deathless. This is 1 in a red for an instant, deal 3 damage to target creature. That creature loses indestructible until end of turn, and if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. This is just your classic premium red removal at 2 mana at instant speed. It's going to be a very high pick and a very strong red common in the format. Another one I think is going to be quite interesting and could be good in the format is Erebor Flamesmith. It's 1 red for a 2/1 Dwarf Artificer. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. I think this will have a home in blue-red. It also will potentially have a home in black-red as well, as a deck that wants to grind people out with sacrifice and drain effects, but also will have a lot of removal to take advantage of the ping damage of Erebor Flamesmith. The next is Warbeast of Gorgoroth. This is 4 red for a 5/4 beast, and whenever it dies or another creature you control with power 4 or greater dies, you amass 2. This is just a creature that's going to come down and trade for something and leave another creature behind. It also means that all of your other big powerful creatures or your 4/4 Orc army token is also going to leave behind another creature when it dies. I don't think you're going to want to play 3 of these, but you might play 2 and you'll probably definitely play 1 in most of your red decks. Finally, next up we have the black commons. First of which is Claim the Precious. It's 1 black for a sorcery, destroy target creature, and the ring tempts you. So this is a card that you would definitely play. It would be the best black common, I think, even if it didn't have the ring tempts you. But the fact that it does means that it just takes what is normally just a really efficient removal spell to something that is going to give you an advantage for the rest of the game as well. And I think is probably my early pick for just the best common in the format as well. Next we have Mirkwood Bats, which is 3 black for a flying 2/3. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. We've already seen many cards that create tokens, and black cards that care about sacrificing tokens as well are in the format. So this is going to be a card that I think drains out opponents very quickly, and it also gets to get in flying for 2 damage in the air if they don't have anything to block it. And a black common that complements Mirkwood Bats is Dunland Crabane. We've already seen this one, but it's 2 black for a flying 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, it creates an Amass Orcs 2, which would trigger Mirkwood Bats. I think black is my early pick for the best commons in the set, and from the top 3, you can already tell it looks quite strong. Finally, we have the green commons, the first of which is Woe's Pathfinder. It's 1 green for a 1/1 human shaman. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Then you can pay 6 green to tap it, and another target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. I think this is just going to be great in green decks to ramp you out. It's also going to be good at potentially splashing, and then it's not irrelevant in the late game like a lot of other mana dorks in that it can put a lot of mana into it to make one of your big green creatures get through and deal a lot of damage. The next one is Ent's Fury. It's 1 green for a sorcery. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control if its power is 4 or greater. Then that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn and fights target creature you don't control. So your classic green fight spell, but with a bit of upside this time and cares more about having big, powerful creatures such as the Ents. Finally, we have Chance Met Elves, which is 2 green for a 3/2 Elf Warrior. And whenever you scry, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it triggers only once each turn. There's a lot of scry in green and blue. I think this will be a premium common in those decks. But even if you only have a few ways to scry, this is a creature that's going to be above rate a lot of the time in your decks and is very, very strong. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Signpost Uncommons. These are the uncommons that are in the 2 color pairs in every color pair, and give you an idea of what you should be doing when you're drafting those decks. There is one for every color pair. However, some color pairs also have an additional one. So keep your eye out for those. But we're going to be taking a look at the ones that sort of indicate how you should be building each of those decks. The first of which is Arwen Undomiel, which is a blue and a green for a 2/2 legendary creature Elf Noble. And whenever you scry, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and you can pay 4 green-blue to scry 2. So Arwen itself is already a complete engine, if an expensive one, but you can tell that this card with a lot of scry effects can completely get out of control. It can put its counters on itself, it can distribute them to other creatures, and it can quickly take over a game if the opponent can't stop it. And when you're stacking scry abilities, it's pretty easy if you've got a lot of them in your deck to scry more scry abilities to the top of your library. So Arwen is an absolute house and an early pick for me for one of the better blue-green uncommons we've seen in a while. They usually are a little bit lacking in terms of purpose, but this one looks like it'll be really good, and I'm hoping blue-green will be a good deck. The The next one is Bilbo, Retired Burglar, which is 1 blue and a red for a 1/3 halfling rogue legendary creature. And when it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. And when it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. So this one is an awesome ring enabler. It basically gives you 2 triggers if the ring tempts you. And Bilbo is an awesome attacker with the ring ability, because the first ability is that creatures with power greater than it can't block it. So only 1 power creatures can block Bilbo. It's going to be able to get in and create treasure tokens and ramp you. And then also, if you can have more ring tempting triggers, if you eventually get it up to the final power, it's going to start killing them pretty quickly by dealing 1 and then draining them for 3 every turn as well. So I really like Bilbo. I think Bilbo will be good in the decks that really care about the ring, and also will be good in decks that care about having treasure tokens to sacrifice. The next one is Butterburbree Innkeeper, which is 2 green and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature, human peasant. In the beginning of your end step, if you don't control a food, create a food token. So we can see that green and white's going to care about food. We could already see that with the pony legendary creature. But this is going to be a great enabler for it, as it's going to create a food token every single turn, allowing you to trigger all of your abilities that care about food quite easily. Next we have Denethor, Ruling Steward, which is 1 white and a black for a 2/4 legendary creature, human noble. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, and you can pay 2 to sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So Denethor again is an engine entirely in itself, as you can keep sacrificing the 1/1 white human soldier creature token every turn to drain them, and you'll get a new one. And also it's just going to allow you to sacrifice other creatures and continue to drain your opponents, and can be a good way to close out a game once they get on low life. You can just sacrifice your board to drain your opponent. And for 3 mana as a 2/4, it's a pretty good rate as well, and it's a good defensive body, which the white-black deck will want. The next one is Guahia the Windlord, which is 4 white and a blue for a 4/4 legendary creature, Bird Noble, and it costs 2 less to cast as long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, and it has flying, vigilance, and other birds you control have vigilance as well. So Guahia is very, very strong, and it makes it clear blue-white cares about drawing additional cards. If you have a ring bearer on the 2nd level of the ring, you can always trigger this by just attacking, and then you can cast a 4 mana 4/4 flying vigilance flyer that also gives your other birds vigilance as well. So this is an awesome premium uncommon, and it's going to be a great draw into drafting blue-white. Another one of which is Prince Imrahil the Fair, which is white and a blue for a legendary creature, human noble, and whenever you draw your 2nd card each turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. So Imrahil is going to be fantastic at just creating a huge army, and if you have ring bearers or other ways to draw cards on each of your turns, you're going to be able to spit out a lot of tokens, and is another way that blue-white can go wide and take advantage of drawing additional cards. Up next is Morhir Urukai Captain, which is black and red for a 2/2 menace legendary creature, Orc Soldier, and if 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on an army, goblin, or orc you control, you put that many +1/+1 counters +1 on that army, goblin, or orc. This one is just a really efficient creature. A 2/2 menace for 2 is great in a beatdown deck, which is what black-red wants to be doing. And then it makes all of your armies, goblins, and orcs even bigger when you put +1/+1 counters on them, which in the case of an army will happen every time. This is effectively like a Lord for Amass, and is going to be an amazing card and a great reason to go in black-red. And if you ever get multiples of this, it's just going to be really, really good, because they're going to have to deal with it, and then you can play it out again. Up next is the Mouth of Sauron, which is 3 blue-black for a 3/4 legendary creature, human advisor. When it enters the battlefield, target player mills 3 cards, then Amass Orcs X, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in that player's graveyard. So this card is telling you that blue-black wants to play instants and sorceries, and wants to have ways to mill cards into the graveyard, and then you can potentially get a huge payoff, and I can see you potentially getting a 4/4 out of this, and then you're getting 7/8 or 8/9 power and toughness split over 2 bodies out of the 1 card, as well as fueling your graveyard as well. So I think the Mouth of Sauron is a really strong card, but it's definitely one you have to build around and take consideration of when you're drafting. Up next is Old Man Willow, which is 2 black-green for a legendary creature, Tree Folk, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. When it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or a token, and when you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Old Man Willow just seems straight up busted to me. I think that this is going to be one of the better uncommons in the set. It is going to be a 4/4 every time on turn 4, and it just get bigger. And then I think black and green are going to have lots of cards that you can sacrifice. Black's going to have Amass creature tokens that you can sacrifice to pick off your opponent's creatures, and then green's going to have a lot of food tokens lying around that you can sacrifice to pick them off as well. This is a must deal with creature, or it'll very quickly take over the board as a huge beater that's picking off your opponent's creatures or shrinking their blockers to ensure that you have profitable attacks. Up next is Shadowfax, Lord of Horses, which is 3 red-white. For a legendary creature horse, it's a 4/4, and it has horses you control have haste, and whenever it attacks, you may put a creature card with lesser power from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Shadowfax seems really strong in that it's going to come down and immediately put, potentially if you've got another creature in hand, onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and add a ton of power and toughness to the board, which is what white-red wants to be doing. This is going to be a curve topper in that deck and allow you to have some really busted draws that can quickly take the game out of control from the opponent. Up next is Friendly Rivalry, which is a green and a red for an instant. Target creature you control and up to one other target legendary creature you control each deal damage equal to their power to target creature you don't control. So there is another green-red legendary uncommon, but it has landfall, it's Strider, and it doesn't really signal any build around because there's not a whole lot of landfall things here. So I've put Friendly Rivalry in here because I think green-red is a deck that's going to care about legendary creatures, and this seems more of the build around than the other green-red uncommon, which I think is just going to be an efficient creature in that deck. But Friendly Rivalry is going to be good without legends, but even better with legends, and it's just a strong uncommon in the green-red deck. In green-blue, we have Legolas, Counter of Kills, which is 2 green-blue for a 2/3 legendary creature elf archer with reach. Whenever you scry, if Legolas, Counter of Kills is tapped, you can untap it. You do this only once each turn. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Legolas. So Legolas is quite small for 4 mana, but if you do manage to kill an opponent's creature, it quickly becomes a 3/4, and then they have to be really careful of how they deal with this in combat, because if you have any instant speed scry, Legolas can spring up to take down flyers, or just kill their opponent's creatures on the ground if you've already killed a couple of creatures with Legolas. I think Legolas is going to be pretty strong. The problem will be that its initial body means that it's not going to be very good at stabilizing boards if you're already behind. Up next, the important thing to take a look at is the mana fixing in the set. Now, there isn't as much mana fixing as there was in March of the Machine, so you're not going to be able to do as much 3-color and 4-color, 5-color shenanigans. However, there are a few options at common. At common, we have in the colors fixing, we have Inherited Envelope. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. It's a 3-mana artifact, and then you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. This card has gone down over the years as the sets have become more and more powerful. It's just a really, it doesn't affect the board as you play it. It will allow you to fix and ramp though, so if you do have some splashy top-end cards, it's potentially going to be a playable. Then we have Shire's Scarecrow, which is a 2-mana artifact creature with Defender. It's a 0/3, and you can pay 1 to add 1 mana of any color, activate only once each turn. So Shire's Scarecrow, not exciting, but is going to allow you to fix, but it's something that can be removed. So again, not one I'm super excited about playing. Then we have Wizard's Rockets, which is a 1-mana artifact which enters the battlefield tapped. You can pay X to sacrifice it and add X mana in any combination of colors. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card. Again, a one-off fixing that you have to already have in the battlefield and puts you a card down until you use it isn't particularly good. If you have ways to recur this, it could potentially be playable, but again, something I'm not very excited about playing. Then we have the Great Hall of the Citadel, which is a land, and it can tap to add colorless, and then you can pay 1 and tap it to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast legendary spells. This is fantastic fixing for legendary creatures, and if you're in like a multicolor legends deck, I think that you're going to want multiples of this in order to cast them. But the one that's by far the best fixing is Shire Terrace. This is it's almost like an Evolving Wilds iteration. It's tap to add colorless, and then you can pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice it, and you search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So the beauty of this is it comes into play untapped and can add mana, But then when you do need to go and get your fixed color or just another color in your deck, you can sacrifice it to get a basic land onto the battlefield tapped, and it can get all the lands in your deck. And I think it's going to be the best fixing in the set if you want to go into, a 3-color splash deck, or even try and play 4 colors, which I don't think we're necessarily going to be able to do. Well, one thing that may enable that is all of the land cyclers. I think that the fact that they're 1 mana is going to make them better, and they go into this colorless fixing type slot as well. So that does add to the ability to splash in the format. Then we also have the green mana fixing. So there's Entish Restoration, which is 2 and a green for an instant. You sack a land, you search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you go and get 3 lands instead. So this is just allowing you to fix. It also allows you to ramp, and is going to allow you to cast a 5-drop on turn 4, and also fix for your colors, and is, I think, going to be a pretty good card in the set, especially if you want to play like a big green deck. There's also obviously Woe's Pathfinder, which we discussed before. And then there's Many Partings, which is a green sorcery for 1 mana. Search your library for a basic land card, put it into your hand, and create a food token. So again, not exciting, but will allow you to splash. It also gives you food, which potentially the green decks are going to want. And certainly if you want to get into a multicolored deck, I think green is going to be where you want to base yourself, as it's got far more options to get multiple colors out of your deck and onto the battlefield, and will allow you to play some of the more exciting cards in the set as they get opened and passed around the table. That is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're excited to draft the upcoming set on Arena and in person as well. Let me know in the comments what cards you're excited to play for, and if you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content. There'll be plenty of Lord of the Rings drafts coming out on the channel once this set is available on Arena. And I'll also be posting the Magic Arena Open videos as well, as we usually do. So be sure to subscribe to check those out. And as always, have a great day.